conflict management. Uh, we but just a bit of myself, and as a way of introduction, my name is Dr. Samuel Jacobs-Abbey, and I'm the Chief Learning Officer and also the Executive Director of the Jacobs-Abbey Global Institute based here in Washington, D.C. area. Most of you or some of you may have been our alumni or have gone through our programs. If you want more information, you just check our website and you will be able to get some information from there. I love this subject because, as some of you may know, or some of you are hearing for the first time, I have been a diplomat almost all my life. I have worked with different agencies within the United Nations systems. I've worked with the African Union for many years. I've worked with as a liaison officer to ECOWAS Secretariat. So those of you in Nigeria, Aso Rock, I'm very familiar with Nigeria and the terrain very well because I've been with ECOWAS for many years until such a time that I felt that it is for time for me to move on. And so currently, I am part of the United States government with the Department of Homeland Security, and then I run Jaggles as well. So you will be able to connect the dots and see where my experience is coming from in terms of our learning opportunity. So please enjoy yourself as we learn and we learn together. And don't hesitate to ask any question if you need clarification. I am more than willing to pause and give you the needed information as you want as possible. So our learning objective for this class is that at the end of today, and this is a loaded class. And because we've lost some time, I will try as much as possible to continue this class tomorrow so that I don't keep you here for that long. Because understanding is that if you keep students for in one place for a long time, you are definitely or you are likely going to lose their attention. And what I don't want to is to lose your attention whilst we are learning. So I will do everything possible to minimize and to manage the time, and then we'll continue. So our learning objectives, if we should go very well and everything goes well, my understanding is that by the end of this class, you should be, uh, Rosemond, I think that the next time we'll take you out of the class because you're distracting us. Uh, the option is that by the end of this class, we should be able to understand the nature and types of conflict affecting youth and our communities. And then we should be able to develop skills in conflict mapping, management, and resolution. Very important area of conflict analysis when you are working in this area of work. And then we should be able to have a good understanding of the gender-based dimensions when it comes to conflict management. And like Kojo mentioned in his introduction, there are different facets involved when we are dealing with conflict. So we are going to learn a lot, and it's going to be very interactive. It's going to be interaction and all that. So conflict. Let's begin our learning today by using the chart. You will learn that I use chart a lot for our conversations, and so let's begin by asking. Don't Google it. Don't AI it. Please, for this class alone, spare Dr. Google. Allow Dr. Google to rest. In your own terms, what is conflict to you? Please put in the chat, what is conflict? And Kojo and Co be monitoring the chat to make sure that we are getting everything intact there. What is conflict for you in your own understanding? Please put in the chat, what is conflict? What is conflict? I want to hear what you think. What is conflict? What is conflict? Let's hear some thoughts. Let's hear some amazing thoughts that all of you have as far as conflict is concerned. What is conflict to you? What is conflict? What is conflict? To you? What is conflict 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 to you What is conflict for you? What is conflict? So I can read a lot. Some of them are coming in beautifully, and conflict can be defined as disagreement between individuals, uh, diverse in opinions, uh, clash of interest, uh, lack of agreement between two parties. Uh, it's an act of misunderstanding. Uh, I see disagreement between people. It's a means of understanding each other through misunderstanding, which sometimes can create more conflict in itself than we even think of. Awesome. Please share all those perspectives. I'm actually paying attention to all that you are sharing. Conflict is a negative force and restricts achievement of common goal. Awesome. These are all wonderful perspectives that you are all sharing. I see disagreement between two or more focus forces due to incompatible goals, interest, and position, which can strengthen or weaken relationships. Uh, I see a clash between individuals. Also, these are all wonderful perspectives that you are seeing here as far as your own perspective or understanding of conflict is concerned. Now, to that point, one of the things that I want all of you to pay attention to uh, is, and Kojo, I need you, if you can manage the room and just admit folks for me so that I will not be distracted.
Okay.
One of the things that we will have to also pay attention to and understand in terms of this learning is that as an instructor, I strongly believe that we must always have a perspective and understanding of how things came about, and so for that reason, it is important to begin this class by having a background of conflict theories. So let's look at the theories and the types of conflict and happiness. Please don't type on the screen. Please don't use the marker. I beg you. All right. So we said conflict is a process involving perceived incompatible goals, scarce resources, or interferences. Now, this is nothing new to all of you. All of you know, based on what you've shared and the understanding you've put on the platform, is that conflict is primarily more or less around incompatible goals. And we want to make sure that in understanding that process, we can have different perspectives. And in doing so, we can have different methods of achieving that goals. And that in itself can lead to conflict. So conflict is natural and inevitable in every human interaction. Let me pose a question that I want us to think through and ask ourselves. Can we live in a society where we don't have conflict? Share your thoughts. Can we live in a society where conflict doesn't exist? So as I mentioned, and as all of you are sharing your perspective, it is equally important to understand that conflict will always be in the midst of us. And why will conflict be in the midst of us? It is because we need to appreciate and understand that it is normal. When there are two people, there is definitely going to be the possibility of disengagement or disliking. In that same vein, when you can also have a conflict all by yourself without even interacting with anybody. How many of you know that you can have your own conflict? how many of you can attest that many times you have conflicts just by yourself and not necessarily about people? Yes, Emmanuel, it happens all the time. It's an intra conflict. It's just you can experience many conflicts, especially when it comes to decision making. And I'm taking time to take you through this introduction and the theories so that it will help you understand the dimension by which we are taking this course to. Uh, and we also know that conflict in itself can be constructive or it can also be destructive. And so, if conflict can be destructive and it can be constructive, then it all depends on how you manage it. So, the question to all of you in this class, and you can raise your hand if you want to speak, or you can put in the chat. If conflict can be destructive and it can be constructive, why are we so concerned about conflict around the world? Are there not many things in our hands or resources in our disposal that exposes us to the same thing? If I have a knife in my hand, a knife can be a good use to chop onions and to cook. It can equally be a bad thing because I can stab somebody and die. So why is that different from conflict? Yes, Dr. Margaret Olabisi.
Okay, hello everyone.
Hi.
Yes, conflicts can be constructive. That is when we say somebody is criticizing you constructively. That kind of conflict is one that people can see where they have gone wrong and try to come to a conclusion and do what is right. The other one that is destructive is the kind of conflict that people don't come together to talk about it, to find a way to resolve those conflicts. And the kind of conflict that at the end of the day, when there's no people coming to the table to judge you, it escalates and things get out of hand and there's destruction. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you. So I also see Hassan, your hand is up, and then Latoya. Hassan, if
Well,
yes,
I hope I can be audible enough.
yes, we can hear you.
I would say the latter example you gave, the use of knife, it has its own advantages and disadvantages. So also conflict, advantages and disadvantages, right? I would say the focus, the need for the focus is that while conflict deals with a society at large, a knife does not have that particular influence. As such, there is need for the society to focus on what has more potential to shape it in a way. So that's the perspective I'm coming from. Thank you.
Got appreciate it. Thank you, Latoya.
Hi, I'm Latoya. I just wanted to say, conflict as far as constructive or destructive, I feel like it all depends on, what your real intentions are, So if you really want something to work and want it to resolve, it can become something that's really constructive, it can be constructive. But if you have no interest or you just, hellbound on not resolving this, or you're not coming to the table with the right attitude, then it can become something that's really destructive.
That's very good. That's a very good response. I appreciate that, Latoya, for sharing that. Let's see who's on it up again here. We have Abdul.
Yes, from my own perspective, constructive or destructive conflict, it has to do with whenever they say something is constructive, we said constructive idea come from educated people, people who are educated. So when the conflict is constructive, from our perspective, I think it should be a conflict coming from individuals who are educative, and then they have clash of interest. And then when it is destructive, it has to be from individuals, the opposite side. So you see, there is nothing constructive coming there. It all go in a destructive manner. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And because of time, and I know there are a lot of individuals who want to speak, so we may not be able to call everybody, but we'll do our best as we go forward. We'll be calling few others to speak here and there. So and I see as well in the chat. So let's move forward, and the rest of you will get opportunity to speak again as we move forward because of time, so that we don't waste all the time on that perspective. Let's move on. Now, having looked at that, there are a couple of options which I believe some of you may have already talked about in the area of types of conflict. In this case, we have what we call the interpersonal level of conflict. And this type of conflict primarily they're usually centered around task conflict. You know, the key classification there is task. Why? Because, you know, we can always have disagreement about goals and procedure and work distributions. And that in itself can create its own interpersonal conflict at the level where we deal with people. And I believe every one of us, some way, somehow, you know, because at the end of the day, we are trying to get to the same place. But what happens is that we sometimes how the goal to get to that place, we may have different perspective and we may have different thought processes around that process to get to that same goal. And then the other key component that we also want to pay attention, and all this is just introduction. We have not actually come into the meat of the matter at all. And the relationship conflicts. Relationship conflicts are equally important to pay attention as part of the organization, the interpersonal level of conflict. The reason, again, is that personal tensions and incompatibilities between individuals can always create conflicts. You know, so I have this intention and you have this background, and putting this here and there can create high level of intentions between us, and we need to pay attention to that as well as we navigate the key classifications as far as the conflict theories are concerned. And then the process conflict, you know, disagreement about how to accomplish a task and make decisions. Many of the times we are going to the same place, but I want to use Okada and you want to use a vehicle. Somebody wants to use a bicycle. At the end of the day, we want to get to that place to accomplish the same task, but we are conflicted based on other activities that we have either biased to, or we feel like it's an easier way for us to navigate through that process to get to where we are going to. Tayo, I see your hand up. Do you have a question? Probably it's from the old time, right? All right, so let's move forward. We also have another type of conflict, which is more focused. Okay. So clearly, this person is not in class. So we also have a type of conflict which is centered around organizational level of conflict. Now, when we are talking of conflict, you see, sometimes the concept or the idea of conflict only comes to our mind when we are dealing with physical conflicts, killing of people, destruction of communities, mesmerizing resources, and destroying things that are actually meant to aid our existence. And so that's where our mind goes to. But the conflict begins with both interpersonal level and at organizational levels. And that is the basis for which you see a lot of challenges happening in our world, quote and unquote, as we are resolving conflict. So the key classification in organizational conflict include the vertical conflict. That's a conflict between those on the top and those on the, all of us who work for organizations. And we know that there are instances where you are going to have disagreement with leadership. Leadership think we need to go this way. Employees think, no, we need to go that way. And that in itself creates a hierarchical conflict between leadership and the employees. And then we also have the horizontal conflicts. The horizontal conflict is usually between units. We are at the same level during in the organization. And so sometimes we want to call the shot, and you also want to call the shot. And then it creates divisional conflict at that level. And that in itself can also lead to conflict that will escalate as we go forward. You will begin to realize that. And then we also have the line staff conflicts. Now, the line staff conflict, it's mostly between operational and support functions. You are going to have a lot of disagreement as to how operations is done at work. And then the role conflict, which involves when individuals face incompatible role and expectations. And listen, this happens many times before we even dive into the structural conflict and all that. Let's focus a bit on the role conflict. In your experience, have you had the opportunity, either yourself or somebody have shared with you, where they've been assigned a role in their workplace, in the office, within our organizations, and they are not performing, and they think their strength could be utilized at another location or at another project, but yet leadership thinks that you are not the one to decide. Have you had that kind of experience with your team members or your your organization? Have you had anybody have that kind of problem in the past? Which is it's called the role conflict. I am very good at SL, using SL. Yes, I appreciate that. Yes, and Salome, you want to share that with us, just a bit of that experience? Okay, I was trying to see if I can get Salome's attention, but we let's move forward. So
okay, Prof, I'm here.
Yes,
sorry,
please.
I didn't unmute.
Got you. Go ahead.
Okay, so I have a background in information technology. So after working for some number of years, I wanted to veer into a different field. So I went, I think that was when I had the course, the advanced diploma in the international relations with Jagels.
Yes.
So I was posted out of my office because I discussed it with my director, and he agreed that I'm posted to a new office so that I could get more experience in this new field. And then I went to my current office and expecting that I was going to be given a role where I would work or help in implementing programs under women, youth, in peace and security. But then I was told that no, because of my IT background, they would want me to be a knowledge manager. And then I can now add the women, youth agenda to it. I wasn't happy because I felt, okay, so I want to get off the IT field because I don't want to be there again. I want to do something different. But I'm being forced to still be there because I have a background that. And so now I'm combining the two. I am a knowledge officer. At the same time, I help the Women, Youth, Peace and Security Institute of the Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center to develop and implement some of their initiatives under the Women, Youth, Peace agenda. And I'm getting it. I don't really like it, but I'm getting it. So that is it.
Thank you so much for sharing. And again, you will understand as we go forward that role conflict can be very challenging, because it comes with some level of fulfillment, which most people don't get until they are able to assign to the proper role that they really wanted to be involved in. Now, causes of conflicts. Causes of conflict. Now, there are structural factors that leads into conflict. And some of the primary causes of structural conflict is resource scarcity. Now, whenever there is a limited budget, whenever there is a limited time, whenever we have limited personnel, or whenever we have limited materials, it leads into conflict. Scarcity has been, resource scarcity has been one of the most dangerous conflicts across the African continent. That has been around the African continent, and the reason is because there's a perception that even though it has been our little challenge, others see politicians embracing and taking much of the resources for themselves. And so with just a little opportunity, people will take advantage to create conflict. Goal incompatibility is another important way by which conflict arises. I can give you a very practical example, which is, all right, your job, or you want to be promoted to become the sector chief or the managing director of the organization you are working in right now. My goal is not to become a supervisor. I just want to come to work 8 to 5 and get paid and go home. And so when we are given a task or a responsibility to work on a thing, the problem is that because your goal is to get more or get promoted, you work above and beyond to be seen by the eyes that be. Whereas my goal is to get my money and get out of the year. I don't put in that much level of commitment. And so that in itself can, as it were, create a problem, which becomes incompatible goal conflict. And then task interdependency. You see, when groups rely on each other to accomplish a task, it can be another source of structural conflicts. And finally, communication barrier. Communication has proven to be that a mere comma or a mere dot can escalate a conflict depending on how the communication is shared. And so it is important that as you pay attention, you get yourself understand what the structural factors that leads into conflict is, and then also look at the individual factors that leads into conflict. The individual factors primarily looks at personality differences, perpetual differences, emotional factors, because when the individual is stressed, when the individual is challenged, when the individual is not there, it affects challenges. And then we also talked about the cognitive biases. It create a lot of conflict because every individual have their own biases. I don't care who you are, your experience, and what you have seen in life. I can tell you for a fact that you have your own biases. I have my own biases. You have your own biases. And so we can definitely allow those biases to impact us in a bigger way than we anticipated or than we expect. And that in itself becomes more problematic if our biases affect us. Things like confirmation biases, attribution errors, and stereotyping. You can see somebody and quickly assume that because he's from or she's from this place, this is who they are. You've already concluded and computed in your mind that this is the way these people are. And already that has created some level of biases for you and from the way you look at things. So it's very important that you look at these structural and individual factors as you are dealing with this. And then the other thing is the manifestation of these individual biases. You know, uh, the manifestation of these conflicts. You look at the behavioral indicators, the behavior, and these are all theories that we are looking at. The verbal indication or indicators, like when you're talking to somebody and all of a sudden you start raising your voice. When some people are talking, you start interrupting them. When people suddenly you become withdrawn from a conversation. It is a behavioral indicator that creates conflict. And if you don't pay attention to them at the early stages of conflict identification, it escalates. Non-verbal clues. It's a very powerful indication. Why? Because at the end of the day, as an individual, the problem you're going to see and have is this. You are going to have people who will not say anything, but their body language says everything. The way they pretend around you, the way they talk around you will definitely show that there is a situation. And then we look at the performance changes. At workplace, you will see that people suddenly their performance have dropped. The quality of work is no longer acceptable. And then that leads to relationship deterioration. You are going to have a problem with people cannot sustain their relationships around you again. And that becomes very concerning. And those things are the things that leads into unnecessary conflicts. Good. As we move forward, I'm trying to get all the theories up and then we can get into the meat. Conflict escalation processes. Now, share with me in the chat room, what are some of the behaviors, attitudes, concerns that leads into conflict escalation? Other than what you will see on the screen. Share with us. Let's learn among ourselves. What are some of the tools or some of the behaviors that leads into conflict escalation? Let me hear what your thoughts are. Some of the behaviors, attitudes that leads into conflict escalation. Yes, Latoya, I see you're on up.
When someone feels that they haven't been heard or they're not being listened to.
Absolutely, I agree. Sometimes just put yourself in the shoe where you are in a meeting or there is an issue that actually bothers you and it's so important to you, but you feel that nobody is listening to you. Just like Latoya said, it leads into conflict. It escalates the conflict because sometimes you want to be seen, you want to be known, you want to be heard. Abdul, I see your hand up.
Most especially when emotions get in at the aspect of hate speech, when you try to body shame someone in certain aspects, it can escalate conflict. Maybe you might not be, but we are having the perception of maybe bringing out a conflict, but that person might not take it lightly and things might go wrong in that aspect too.
Absolutely, absolutely. Emotional awareness, very important, because it leads to conflict escalation. In the chat, I see violence and anger. I see watering down people's pain and feelings, not showing empathy, comparing people feeling with others, even when coping mechanisms are different. Absolutely. I tell students and leaders all the time, never compare two employees or two team members. Never. Don't even do it, especially when you are doing evaluation of them, because you create unnecessary conflict among them. Yes. I see Agnes. I see your hand up. You want to go ahead, and then we have Faith. Kehindi, Agnes. Okay, all right. I think you're not ready yet. So let's go to Faith. Faith, you want to chime in?
Okay, good evening, everyone.
Hi.
Am I being heard?
Yes, you are.
Okay. For me, in the workplace, I think it's tribalism that play up mostly conflict. Like when people feel like their own tribe is better than your own and yours is inferior, probably you are minority in the society, and all of that leads to serious conflict.
Thank you for sharing that. And this is important to you. The reason is because you may live in an environment where tribalism plays a huge factor. And to go back to Latoya's point, when you feel like nobody is listening to you or nobody is hearing you, then that itself escalates that conflict. So thank you for sharing that perspectives with us. Agnes, can you hear us now? Otherwise, we'll move forward. All right, Daniel, I see your hand up. Daniel will be the last one so that we can move forward. Daniel, your hand is up. You want to say something? Okay, I think all of them are not ready yet, so let's move forward. All right, so to that point, perception can also increase or escalate conflict. I like Aaron's point here as well. Lack of accountability, historical grievances. Doris, you are absolutely right. You know, and classism, unmet expectation, you know, entitlement mentality. All this can actually escalate conflict. Thank you so much, all of you, for sharing that. So there are positive and negative aspects of conflict outcomes, and one of them, let's look at some of the constructive outcomes. We talked about it. You know, when I began my conflict resolution journey, maybe what, 32, 33 years ago, you know, I came to the realization that conflict can be a good thing, just like a knife can be a very powerful tool in your hands. And so, if used wisely, and to borrow Latoya's words, if you use them with good intentions, what you're going to have is that it is going to enhance creativity and innovations around your environment, your communities, your work, and all other places that you find yourself. Because the idea is that it's going to build that rapport among your communities. And then you will also be in a better place to make decisions, because why? One of the things that young people, especially investing in youth, is trying to achieve with this training is to create in your mind diverse perspectives. I was training senior level government officials with the US government, and I told them that if you have not gained mastery in asking for a feedback, don't ask for one. Because when you ask people to give you feedback, the expectation is that you want them to be honest with you. The question is, how many of you are ready to accept constructive feedback? 99% of people say, yeah, I want it. But they are quick to activate their defense wall as soon as you start giving them a perspective which is different from what is expected of you. So it is very important to pay attention to understanding some of these perspectives because conflict can be good. When there is conflict, the Chinese always sees opportunity in conflict, because when there is conflict, it helps you to appreciate and improve relationship, honest relationship, because I know what Abdul don't like, and so I will not repeat that mistake again. I know what upsets Godwin, and so I will not repeat that mistake again. I'll be very careful when I'm going to talk to Latoya, because the last time that I spoke with her, her reaction to what I thought was a joke was completely different from what I was expecting. And so constructive conflict helps us to appreciate people and understand where they are, and we are able to build the relationship from there. And then it also becomes an organizational learning and adaptation, because we get to learn and appreciate where people are, and we can meet them exactly where they need to be met. To that point, if there is positive and constructive conflict, then there should also be negative conflict, and which I would describe it more as a destructive outcomes. See, when conflict is not managed very well in the workplace, for instance, it will decrease productivity. Productivity is likely going to go down, and morale will be lost, because there is silos. People are working in silos. And the most dangerous thing is when you work in a community or in an environment where people speak the same language and others do not. I'm sure, Latoya, now you've lived in Uganda for a long time now, you have been able to speak the local language there. But when you first entered Uganda and all you speak is English, you realize that when two people are speaking local language, immediately your senses activated. Are they talking about me? And so that is exactly what morale can do. And it can also lead to absenteeism, because people feel they are not in the right place and they don't want to show up, and it affects productivity, and people will not even tell you why they are not showing up. They just will not show up. But one of the things that we need to understand and appreciate, especially those of you in Africa or from Africa, understand that it doesn't matter where you live in Africa, they are all one people. They all have the same grandfather. In fact, I even tell people all over the world, whether you live in Jamaica, whether you live in the United States, as long as you are black, you all have the same grandfather and grandmother. And the same thing to the white race. It doesn't matter where you live in the world. As long as you are white, you have the same grandmother, grandfather. It's just migration and other dispensations that may have put all of you in different places. And so you need to understand that relationship is key. Look, if I have had great opportunities in my life to travel to about 144 countries. In fact, next week I'm heading to Romania, which is going to be my 145 countries. Now, when I travel, I get the opportunity to understand why relationships are important. Never destroy relationships because we are the same people. All these global wars around the world, Look at them. Take a pause and look at it. They are the same people. Either it is religious conflict, it's control of power, control of influence. But as Marcus Aurelius will say in his book on meditation, everything human will fade away. So why destroy things, properties, and relationship when with a due time it will fade by itself? I tell people this. There are times where you will even see people in your life one time in your entire life. Why destroy relationship? Pay attention and let us, because whenever there is a destructive outcomes, guess who suffers? The country suffers. Resources are wasted. Energy dissipates. Now, maybe what, 15, 20 years ago, if you have been to Liberia, because we are doing conflict management, I like to bring some of these examples in. And Kojo, Aaron, all those of you who have a lot of experience with this, and please, we are students and teachers at the same time. Chime in if there is a need to bring examples to make the conversation interesting. But in Morovia, if you have entered Liberia before the war and you have gone back to Liberia after the war, you will get an appreciation of what destructive conflict can do. Those of you who knows me very well, you know I was deployed to Sierra Leone for a long time. I lived in Sierra Leone and understood Sierra Leone very well. If you have been to Sierra Leone before the war and you've gone to Sierra Leone during the war or after the war, you will appreciate what a waste of resources and human energy. And that is one of the reasons why investing in youth organization is making sure that organizations recognize that these conflicts can escalate into a dimension that can destroy resources. Another interesting factor, which I believe all of you, some way, somehow can recognize, it's the idea of cultural dimension. I know Agnes had mentioned earlier on, or no, Faith had mentioned earlier on about tribal differences. Listen, whenever we are designing a conflict resolution methodologies, we need to factor into our communication style. It's very crucial in the learning environment. The question then comes to what kind of communication do we want to bring up front? Are we going to have a direct communication or indirect communication? What is the preference of our communication? I teach students, and before I came to this class, I was teaching emotional intelligence class, and I was telling the students, if you tell yourself that I am, as for me, everybody knows that I'm very blunt. I say it the way it is. It doesn't work for everyone. Pay attention to the people you're having conversation with. Look at the power distance. I tell folks all the time, you need to understand the political savviness when you are dealing with leaders. Who is in the room that can support your idea or your vision? The fact that people do not agree with you doesn't mean that your idea is bad. It means that they prefer other things than your idea. Okay. Pedro, can you be monitoring all right. Thank you. These things are very important to make sure that you pay attention to the cultural dimensions when you are designing programs so that it does not in any shape. It's a piece of a video here that I want us to watch. And it's just going to give us a perspective of conflict. and the basic things that we can do to manage those conflicts. So let's watch this short video, and then we'll come back to continue the class.
Brainidos presents the 5 conflict styles. Which is yours? Conflict. No matter how you slice it, we're all at the center of it at some point. It could be with family members, friends, people you work with, and even complete strangers. But have you ever wondered why certain conflicts flare into a full-on battle, while others simply fizzle out? Well, the truth is, everyone has their own unique personality. We all handle stressful situations differently. When it comes to conflict, we tend to default to certain behaviors that reflect our personal style of dealing with it. If you want to handle conflicts more effectively and find mutually beneficial solutions, it's important to understand your own conflict style and recognize the styles of others. So let's dive in and find out where you stand. Number 1, avoiding. Some folks have a strong aversion to conflict and would rather avoid it altogether. They might downplay an issue or pretend it doesn't exist instead of confronting it head on. Now, there are some positives to avoiding conflict. It can keep arguments from happening and help maintain a peaceful relationship. It also gives people time to think about their feelings and come up with a thoughtful response. But there are some downsides too. Avoiding conflict can mean issues don't get resolved and communication suffers, and that can damage relationships. It may also create tension and make people feel uneasy around each other. And let's not forget that avoiding conflict means missing out on the chance to learn and grow from difficult situations. Number 2, accommodating. People with the accommodating style tend to be cooperative and willing to compromise to prevent conflicts. On the bright side, accommodating can help maintain relationships by prioritizing the needs and wants of others. It creates a generous and kind atmosphere that contributes to a positive social environment. Plus, being accommodating can help develop a sense of community and teamwork, which is great for group settings. The downside is that accommodating can lead to a lack of assertiveness, often resulting in sacrificing one's own needs and desires. It can also cause frustration and resentment if a person feels that their priorities are constantly ignored. Number 3, competing. Those who display this style have a tendency to prioritize their own needs and goals over that of others. The positive aspect of competing is that it allows people to assert their needs and desires, which is important in certain situations. It can even make one seem more confident. Competing can also encourage personal growth and challenge individuals to push themselves to their limits. On the negative side, when people become overly competitive and focused on winning at all cost, it can create a sense of aggression and hostility. Number 4, compromising. When it comes to conflict, some people are all about finding a middle ground. They're flexible and open to compromise. The good thing about compromising is that it creates a sense of fairness and balance and encourages cooperation and communication in order to find a mutually acceptable outcome. But sometimes compromising can be a bit of a bummer. People might feel like they're giving up too much, and that can leave them feeling dissatisfied. Plus, when there's too much focus on finding a middle ground, one might forget to stand up for their own needs. Number 5, collaborating. Collaborators prioritize finding a solution that works for everyone, instead of just focusing on their own needs and wants. Of course, this is often a good thing because it leads to mutual respect and understanding as people work together to find a solution that benefits everyone involved. It can also foster creativity and innovation since it encourages thinking outside the box and considering multiple perspectives. But let's not forget the challenges that come with collaboration. For example, if there's a lack of trust or communication, it can be tough to find that win-win solution. And sometimes it can be rather time-consuming to come up with the perfect plan. Hopefully, you now have a better understanding of yourself and others when it comes to resolving conflicts. It's important to know what your own style of approach is so that you can make sure your arguments are effective and productive for everyone involved. And even though sometimes your approach might clash with someone else's, that doesn't mean you should throw in the towel. Both sides can work together to find solutions that make everyone feel understood and satisfied. If you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up and share with your friends so we can keep making them. For more videos like this, hit the subscribe button and don't forget to click on the notification bell. Also, be sure to check out our other videos as well. Thanks for watching.
Yeah. All righty, great. So I like to hear your perspective. What do you think of the video? Was it a useful video? Did it gives you a perception? And if so, knowledge check. There were a couple of source of conflict or style of conflict. Now, what I want us to do right now is that we as a group together, all of us now, please share in the chat, what is your conflict style? Are you the one who does the avoidance type? Are you the competitive type? Are you the compromise type? What is your style of conflict? This is important. The reason this is important is because as we are developing skill set to manage conflict in our workplace and the people around us, we need to have understanding of our conflict style. So what is your conflict style? So I see accommodating and compromise. I see compromise type. I see compromise. I am more accommodative and compromise type. Compromise. There's a reason why I asked this question. So I see accommodating. I see collaborating, accommodating, accepting people excesses without questioning, while compromising is bending our own needs to suit multiple people, avoidance, but I think I have to change and all that. So good. I'm reading and I'm enjoying it, Kojo. I'm sure you are enjoying all the various conflict management styles that people have, assertive when necessary. I see. Could you tell me, what do you think so far?
It's very interesting. It's still interesting. Very nice what people are writing. Yeah.
Yes, good. So what I see here is that I see most of you you know, and in conflict management, in understanding in conflict management, in conflict management and understanding of your style, it's important. The reason why we have so many problems in the world is because the people who call themselves presidents, the people who call themselves prime ministers, the people who call themselves community leaders, the people who call themselves politicians, chiefs, imams, and what have you, organizational heads, okay, I think this person, unfortunately, I'm going to remove from the class because it's playing music, which means he's not paying attention. So I have taken him from class and I've noted him, and he will not be given a certificate. Good. So the other thing that happens is that all these people, unfortunately, do not know their conflict management style. And so their style escalates the conflict into another area. And so it is important for you as an individual to understand your style of conflict. Now, Ed mentioned that, well, he is an avoiding type. And then I see Loretta also mentioned that sometimes avoiding. It is not a bad thing. Avoidance is also a conflict management style, especially if the conflict management style, if the conflict you are dealing with in particular, it's not going to kill somebody. For instance, let me give you a practical example of when an avoidance approach can be useful in our in managing conflict. Now, for instance, I heard that Salome said something about me, and everything shows that Salome is very loyal, honest, comes to meetings, show up at gatherings. When we are doing contributions, she does the contributions. Everything we do, she participates fully. But somebody told me that, well, she said this about you. I can use the avoidance approach because there's no need for me to ask, because her action contradicts what the person is saying. But at the same time, you can use the avoidance approach if you weigh the magnitude of the problem you are dealing with, and you came to the realization that it doesn't hurt much to ignore because that relationship is more important. The same way when you are using the how do you call it? When you are using the compromise approach, we compromise because the relationship is more important to us. Sometimes you will have to compromise, keep him at the back of your mind, not your integrity, not your values, but you compromise to achieve a goal. A good example, you have a family. You only have $50 in your pocket, and you need to buy food for your family. And you want to go watch soccer. And you are a soccer fanatic. But you also understand that you can compromise your soccer and use that $50 to buy food for your family. It's a compromise. The fact that you didn't watch the game doesn't mean you are going to die. After all, you can watch the game, a replay of the game. After all, you have the opportunity to, as it were, let somebody tell you the story, or you can go to YouTube and watch the game replay again. Aaron, your hand is up. You have a question, or it's from the old hand?
No, so you can finish. I just wanted to make a quick point, if you don't mind. But if you can
go ahead.
when you're done.
No, go ahead. I'm done. Go ahead.
Okay, so the issue about the individual conflict styles, the 5 key conflict styles that has been outlined by many of us. I just wanted to make a point, but anyone can correct me if I'm wrong. Any of the individual styles can either be utilized in a functional way or dysfunctional way, depending on the situation. And I want to juxtapose that to your leadership style. So, for instance, in the military, they can decide to use a competing, you can decide to use a competing style, especially in emergency situation that requires you to be a little bit of instructive. So you command you to do something, you obey and you comply. All right. But the same competing style, you can also be destructive by being authoritarian and insisting that this is what I want it to be done and that's it. You don't allow room for consensus. The same applies to avoidance. If I'm a leader and I can decide to avoid certain things by being a laissez-faire leader and not say anything, and things can be destructive in terms of your organizational performance. But you can also avoid by realizing that it's so trivial for you to what? To interject and create problem, because like you give example of Salome, you know the person, you know the personality, so why do you want to jump into a trivial issue and take it on and become a conflict? So I just want to emphasize on that point, so that at least, I mean, if anybody has a divergent view on it, I'll be very grateful to express it, to hear from them.
Awesome, thank you. So Aaron has given us a case study. Do we have agreement with what he said, or is there any contradicting view, not necessarily contradicting view, but alternative view to what Aaron said. And before anyone says anything, Aaron, I will say to you, you're absolutely right. Prince, so yes, Aaron, I completely agree with you, because you see, these tools and style of management are all situational. And that's one of the things that I want every student to take away from this class. It is situational. Why is it situational? Because we utilize these tools. One person can utilize all the 5 styles based on the situations you are dealing with. You can become very competitive if you are a salesman and you sell cars, and your friend, I have a good friend relationship with you, and we are both selling cars. We can compete. But what we usually encourage people to pay attention to, let us compete against the problem and not ourselves. So we are selling cars. We are competing to sell the car. Absolutely. We are competing. We are selling the car. I'm going to sell the best car. I'm going to get the best person to buy the car. I'm going to get the employee of the year. It should be, the competition must be between the situation and not us. That is why you will see in Africa, for instance, you will see politicians will compete for a political position, and the masses that follows the politicians will be fighting, butchering themselves, hurting each other, burning their houses, and their families get caught up in a conflict. And guess what? You see the same politicians attending weddings together. You see the same people attending funerals together. In fact, the most annoying part is that you see them drinking beer together. But meanwhile, you were fighting a few weeks ago. If you understand the use of these conflict methodologies, you will appreciate the fact that the politicians that you follow, that has created a lot of conflict in the world, they are not competing against themselves. They are actually competing against the problem. That is why after the elections are over, after they've insulted themselves in public, you will see them sitting and dining and laughing together. In fact, there's a case in Ghana, if I'm not mistaken, those of you in Ghana, you can correct me. There is a brother, 2 brothers, one is in the NDC or so, and one is in the NPP. And when the NPP was in government, he was a minister, and the NDC is in power. The other brother too is a minister. Do you expect them to kill themselves as siblings? Absolutely not. So these are the reasons why all of you, as you are learning, you need to appreciate and understand the use of this. Moses, I see your hand up.
Okay, thank you so much. Well done. So I want to add to a point on this competition thing. So when you were talking, what came to mind was the Nigerian regional government. There's a way in 1967, there is a way the regional government was competitive. Healthy competition took place between the South West region. And during the period, there was a lot of development. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
There was a lot of development due to that arrangement because of the context of our situation. We might not say it's conflict, but as I defined earlier too at the beginning of this, as conflict is that is the disagreement between 2 or more people based on incompatible goals, needs, and interests. So looking at it, while you were explaining this competition thing, it worked for Nigeria at that point, though there are challenges, but it helped us move forward. So competition can be as good, and even there has been a call for us to think around it, especially when there are scarce resources, and there are a lot of interest to look at, which is something that a lot of people are also asking and thinking about. So I just feel like shipping that in. Well done. Great work. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Thank you for adding perspective to the conversation. So we need to definitely understand and appreciate the fact that these conflict management styles are important. And if every one of you will recognize, because the key word is the recognition of your style. You see, if you don't know your style, every individual, it's just that this class doesn't have that kind of room for us to do assessment. Otherwise, I would have given you a link where you'll be able, but I think I'll put it in the platform after the class, maybe today or early tomorrow, so you can take your own assessment to know where your default style is. Because everyone have their own default style that they use. And when they utilize that, it becomes their go-to. So you have to be intentional to move away from your default style to situational, to be able to, if you are the kind who is very, who like to use the collaborative approach. Well, if there's a project that we are going to work on, so let's say, for instance, this work that we are doing right now, Kojo believes in collaborative approach. And so Kojo was able to get the Basque government to give some funding to do this program. So, well, Jagos have the resources and the ability and the technical know-how and the professors well-trained to do that. Let's collaborate. It's a win-win. We collaborate, we bring knowledge to our students. But you see, if you don't know how to collaborate and you want to do everything all by yourself, this is where conflict kicks in. And it gets escalated into the another level of pain among people. To that point, what comes to your mind when you hear conflict? What comes to your mind? Just be very plain. Yes, Esther, you can have all the 5 styles. All the 5 styles. Everybody can have all the 5 styles. But there is a default too. You see, default is when it comes naturally. You don't have to think about it. There are some people who naturally will want to avoid anything that is confrontational. You will never see them involved in a conversation or in a meeting or anything that will bring confrontations. No, they will avoid it completely. There are those who will, oh my goodness, they want to challenge you, everything you say. In fact, if you are a professor and you don't have patience, you sack them from your class, because they come to class with the intention of challenging you. There are people like that. Yes, Chichi, I see your hand up. You have a question.
Hello, Prof. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, I just wanted to add to the different conflict styles. I wanted to say that, just like Aaron had mentioned earlier, leadership is quite situational, and as a leader, it's important that we apply the different conflict styles depending on the assertiveness and cooperativeness of the situation. For instance, if you look at the competing style, you find out that the objective there is for the or her own opinion to be heard. You want it all. So this style is quite assertive, but then it is not cooperative. Mm-hmm. And then for cooperative style, we could look at the collaborative style.
Yes. Oh, I think she froze. She froze. So yes, but we got a memo of what teacher was trying to say. So it is very
important. The collaborative style is it's more sustainable and brings out innovation amongst conflicting parties. Right. Everybody brings to the table their different opinions, and so it's quite easy for you to understand the situation better, and you know how to navigate through the different dynamics, especially when it comes to the root causes of this conflict. So at the end of the day, you get a win-win situation for everyone. So I would just say that using every style is good, but the collaborative style for me still remains the best style for sustainability, depending on the situation, like I said. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Tichi, for adding to that. So let's move forward, and then we will get another opportunity for another set of questions. So there are common misconceptions of conflict. And there's a false belief that conflict is always destructive. I believe we've been able to realize that conflict is not always destructive. So we don't have to avoid conflict at all times. Sometimes conflict is good. It helps us to understand ourselves very well. Another misconception too is that conflict means that someone must win and other must lose. Well, we just learned from conflict management style right now that we don't have to, nobody have to lose in order for us to avoid conflict. Conflict is something that is within us and we have to manage that. Now, conflict indicates failure in relationship or organization. Absolutely not. The fact that people are fighting, of course, I'm not talking of destructive fighting, but with the fact that people have different perspectives, different opinions, different views, doesn't make it that there is it's a bad conflict. It's a good conflict. It's a good problem to have where you have diverse views. Because if you run an organization or you lead a group of people where everybody agrees with you and there are no diverging views, trust me, very soon you'll get into a ditch because nobody is paying attention to you. And then conflict is a sign of poor leadership or management. That's not true. That's not true. In fact, it's even a strength where there is a conflict because you are tolerating perspectives. You are understanding different perspectives of people. And that in itself will create a level of appreciation and understanding of how things should roll. Jessica, I see your hand up.
Hello, Prof.
Yes, we can hear
Good
you.
evening.
Good evening.
All right. So I wanted to add another misconception. From my point of view, I think anytime I hear conflict, it sounds like war. And from what we are learning, I realize there's a misconception most people have. Anytime they hear conflict, hey, there's a war, there's a dispute between two or more people or countries. Thank you.
Absolutely, you are correct. Elvis, your hand is up. Elvis, can you hear me?
Hello?
Yes.
Yes, dog.
Okay,
Prof.
wherever you are, Elvis, there's a lot of noise there.
Yes, I'm having my mother's funeral, so I'm sorry. But then I have to join because it is important to me.
Okay, please go ahead.
So my question is, I've gone through all that we are studying, and then I want to ask that does conflict at a certain point bring victory?
Yes.
Does conflict at a certain point, at the extreme end, bring victory? Because at the scenario, I have had a lot of conflict in my life. With the Ghana, we had the 37-37, and the Formula victory became the something at the milestone of it. And I was part of that victory that brought about the Formula politically. We were conflict, so I wanted to ask that does conflict at some point bring victory? Because you have to involve in that. You have to be violent to bring something positive. Sometimes violence brings positivity. So I wanted to ask about that. Thank you.
Very good question. Thank you very much. So remember, we talked about conflict, and we mentioned that conflict can be good or bad, depending on the intentions of the one involved in the conflict. Now, the moment you use the terminology violent, then you have already, because the word violent means that you are actually going to destroy resources. There may possibly be a loss of human life. And if you use those strategies and tactics, they are not conflict resolutions themselves. They are fear and coercion and manipulation, and it then absolutely, Aminat, then it becomes an armed conflict, which escalates into destruction and goes beyond the approach which Dr. Martin Luther King and Mahatma Gandhi used as non-violent approach. And so in conflict management and conflict resolutions, we try as much as possible to get to the drawing board and talk. In fact, we will dive into an area where we are going to get all these pieces put together, and you will appreciate and understand that. Now, Godwin, let's hear from you, and then we will move the slide forward because I'm looking at the clock. Godwin, you have your hand up? Okay, great. So I think that Godwin is not available, so we will move. Yes, Godwin, you back? Okay, go ahead. Godwin, we can hear you. Okay, I think.
Oh, can you hear me now? Is it better?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Yeah, sure. Yes, conflicts. What even makes some conflicts difficult is that there are people who have vested interest who always want this situation to persist, and they can be the ones behind pouring more fuel on the fire. And so one stand must be clear, because if not, there are alternatives to an issue. But if we have only hammer, we see everything as a nail. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for bringing that perspective. So class, what I'm going to do right now is that we are going to dive into the meat for today, which is conflict mapping. Like that's why I said all that we looked at prior to this was just an introduction. So what I'm going to do right now, I want people to, because we've been on the screen for a period of time, I want us to take, what is the time right now? It is 2:48 here. So I want us to take 2 minutes break. Please stretch, walk around, grab some water, grab some coffee, and then let's come back at 2:50 or yes, 2:50 my time, which will be wherever you are, as soon as it gets to 50. So let's take that short moment and then we'll connect again. I'll see you all in 2 minutes. I believe that we are back, and then we will want to continue so that we can finish on time as well. So now I want to introduce you to the crack of our lesson today, which is going to be centered around conflict mapping. But first of all, I want to make sure everyone is back to your desk or to your device. Please give me a thumbs up to indicate that you are back, so I will know that you are back, and then we can, so that we don't miss anyone. I want to make sure everyone is back. All right, thank you for hearing me. Thank you for showing that as well. All right, so now let's dive into a very important part of our learning today, which is what we call the conflict mapping. What is conflict mapping? Conflict mapping is a visual and analytical tool that helps identify, organize, and understand complex web of relationships, issues, and dynamics within a conflict situation. So one of the things that the investing in youth is doing is that we are trying to give you the tools and the resources to help you clarify and understand and appreciate conflict, especially when it's a very complex one. So the question then is, why is conflict mapping important? Why does it matter? Can you share some ideas based on the definition you see on the screen? Can any of you please share in the chat why you think my conflict mapping is important? Again, like I said, if you want to learn, if you want to get the best of things, don't Google it. Just write what comes into your mind. There's no right or wrong answer. It's a learning. So why is conflict mapping important? Why does it matter? Because we said that conflict mapping, from the definition, we said it's a visual and analytical tool that helps you to identify, organize, and understand the complex web of relationships. So I see Aminat said it helps in better strategizing how to intervene in solving conflict. Absolutely. And then Onoa mentioned that it simplifies conflict analysis. And then Ed mentioned that it helps to select the best management tools. And then I see Loretta say conflict mapping gives direction to the job. And then I see Nixon said to understand the root cause and the source of the problem. Latoya said it can open you up to new solutions. And I see Jessica mentioned that for conflict resolution. I see Ibrahim said it shows who involves directly and indirectly in the process. I see Ofori mentioned that it prevents escalation. Doris said it provides a clear understanding to the conflict. And Usman said that it promotes proactive approach. And Hassan said it understands conflict, complex relationship between subjects. And as Esther says, it helps create peace in relationships. See, Ofori said it prevents escalation. Osman said it helps to identify where to tackle. And Bukhari said that it allows to know who you are dealing with and the parties involved. And so all of you are absolutely right. And you are sharing perspectives, which I believe it's awesome. And Kojo, I'm sure you are taking note of all the ideas that have been shared, because I mean, again, like I said from the beginning,
yes.
wonderful responses from our students as well. So yes, the reason this matters, I just as all of you have said, is because at the end of the day, one of the things you will appreciate and understand is that it provides an objective overview of subjective experiences. How? Because in conflict mapping, you have the opportunity to connect with all the people that matters, and that helps you to understand or reveals the hidden connections and the underlying issues. I tell folks all the time, and I'm sure all of you in class can attest to that. Whenever there is a disagreement between people, there is always an underlying issues. Is that right? Whenever there is a conflict or disagreement between people, there is always an underlying issue. And sometimes we are too embedded in the conflict to the point that we tend to forget what actually caused the conflict in the first place. Do you realize that sometimes you can be too participatory in the conflict, or you become too exciting and too involved in the conflict that if we go back to ask you what actually caused the conflict, you don't remember? Yeah, it happens all the time. If you are married and you always have a fight with your husband or your wife, it gets to a point that you don't even know why you are always fighting. If they ask you, you will give a generic answer, which doesn't necessarily relate to what was actually happening, but you can easily pretend as if that is what is happening, but that may not be the case. So it is very important that we pay attention to understand what we are dealing with. And so conflict mapping helps you to appreciate those underlying conflict. I tell people all the time, always make sure you want to, don't just be quick to allow your biases to determine the outcome. You'll be wrong. You'll be wrong. Or this is the way I like to do things, and so I'm going to do it that way. Absolutely not. It doesn't work that way. It also helps you prioritize and intervene when appropriate with some strategies that will help you achieve your results and your goals. And then finally, it creates a shared understanding among stakeholders. That is why conflict mind mapping is crucial. Right? Now let's look at the model itself. And we are going to use the conflict iceberg model. Class, if you didn't learn anything at all from this course, I want you to focus here because this is your takeaway. Whenever there is conflict, see, keep it at that pace of like an iceberg. Conflict resolutions continue to fail many times. How many of you have sat in meetings, even with your children, to resolve a problem and it fails? How many of you with your team members have sat on a round table and it fails? How many conferences have you traveled to attend to come out with a solution and it fails? How many of you have been invited by your chief and your community leaders to participate in the community engaging activity and it still didn't yield the results you are looking for? Why are we still fighting in our countries and we are still not getting the results? The reason is that simple. Conflict resolutions effort failed because they only address the visible 10% of what the conflict is. So that's why in my slide, you will see here, I put above the waterline 10%, which is visible. And what are some of the visible conflict that we see? There is an obvious argument between us or disagreement between two people, or one state or is fighting another state, or one country is fighting another country. Now, if you turn on the news, what do we hear right now? It's either Iran is fighting Israel or Russia is throwing some bombs to Ukraine. Or in our local communities, one tribe is fighting the other. Why? Because we are only seeing the visible 10%. Very important. All you are seeing is the visible. It's just visible. Because as we sit right now here, if you are having conflict, do we know? We don't. We have no idea what you are going through as an individual. Whether you have a conflict with your spouse, whether you're having an issue with your company, whether there's a fight happening, we don't get to know that because they are not visible. So today, as you walk away in this class, if somebody asked you, why have we attended so many conferences? Why have we participated in unending workshops and seminars? Why has the Bretton Woods institution and charity organizations, including the formation of the United Nations in 1945 and all that, why have we still not yielded the result we are looking for? What will you say? Please put in the chat. It's a knowledge check. What will you say is the reason why we have not attained or achieved the needed results that we are looking for? Why? I'm trying to read your responses. Nothing has come in yet. But why? Why? I see, because the reason is we neglect the root cause of the problem. The hidden causes have not been identified. I see, because we only focus on the visible issues and because the actual problem was ignored or not attended to. This is beautiful. This is wonderful. I'm sure you are capturing this as part of your action report, because we are understanding and
very nice.
Right?
Very nice. Yeah.
Good.
Very nice.
Good. So absolutely, all of you are right. The reason why we are spending resources and money is because we only depart money and disperse money and invite people for workshops and seminars and pay plane fare and conference fees and stay in the fancy hotels, is because we only react whenever the possibility of physical 10% shows up. As soon as we hear in the news that there is a fight in Abiyakuta, there will be a conference right now. Let's bring stakeholders together to discuss the fight. As soon as we hear there is a fight in Kwara State, all of us will see. I'm only mentioning the states in Nigeria that I have been to. So if I don't call your state, don't be upset with me in Nigeria. You know, out of Lagos, everybody enters Nigeria through Lagos. So Lagos people, don't expect me to mention Lagos. But as soon as you hear, you know, these fights are happening, immediately we call for a meeting, because we are only seeing the physical 10%. But the real problem that we ought to deal with and manage is the idea of the below the waterline. What effective mapping does, it helps us to reveal the critical 90% below the surface. Now, how many of you have watched the movie Titanic and you saw that iceberg? You know, you saw that iceberg. Now, the iceberg you saw there was just a tiny piece that hit the ship. But the reason the ship sank was because there's a huge ice below that nobody sees. The same is applicable when you are working on a project. When you go to school, right now, we are all here. You could be sleeping. You could be doing other things. But you are sacrificing what people don't realize. When you graduate school, everybody comes to say congratulations. They celebrate your certificate. But they have no idea the hours you spend in your quiet moment learning, assignments, projects, frustrations. Sometimes you even want to quit. My mapping helps you. Mapping helps you to appreciate and understand and be able to identify the critical 90% that nobody sees. And Tayo said this is because the root cause of conflict is not addressed strategically with the appropriate approaches. Absolutely. So the real problem why we have conflicts all over, and those of you who work in organizations where conflict is your core mission, I want you to go back to the drawing board and change your organizational conflict resolution strategy. Don't be driven by the images you see on the screens. Don't be driven by the videos you see. Don't be driven by the conferences and sleeping in fancy hotels. No, be driven by the underlying needs and interests of the people in your community. And so I want to see organizations shift from holding a conference because we saw image of a war. No, we should hold conference because we've identified that in our community, the whole community that we have, we only have 2 schools, and the schools is 700 or 200 people community. Or we have 1 hospital, which is serving the whole community. Or we have 1 ambulance or 1 fire truck that is managing the whole community. That is the underlying needs and interest. Because if we don't buy another fire truck and there is a fire happening, you know that the whole place is going to burn down. This is where your focus needs. This is how you do the mapping. Is somebody learning? Are we learning? Are we learning? As my good friend Joshua Selma would say, is somebody learning? Right? The idea is that we need to also appreciate the historical grievances and the past hurts. Those of you who are very, 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 very knowledgeable, you will see, like in Liberia, the crisis that led to that bloody war in Liberia happened as the result of historical grievance. For many years, most people who have led and ruled Liberia are the folks we call the American Liberians. They came to school in America, they were born in America, they have American names like Prince Johnson, like Salif Johnson, like all those. They are all typical Liberia. They call it Liberia America, you know. And so the historical grievance is that these people have ruled for many years in Liberia. And so when opportunity came for Sergeant Doe, who is a native Liberian, to take over the country, it led to a bloody conflict because of the historical grievances of you people have mistreated and led us for too long. It is now our turn to show you where power lies. Mind, we are talking about conflict iceberg model in our mapping. So you pay attention to the historical grievances and the hurt of the past. So as we are attending conferences and workshops, it is not the imagery that we are seeing, but we are trying to understand in our community what has been the history of our community. Many of you, the communities and the cities you live in, you have no knowledge of the historical context of the history. You just happen to live there. You need to know the community. 200 years ago, how did this community even got its name? Seek knowledge, understand this perspective. Then talk about cultural values. I say this all the time. And Latoya can attest to this because she's originally from the United States and she's currently doing some good work in Uganda. Now, I said Latoya can understand this. Why? Because you see, cultural context is important. If Latoya sees somebody, a woman, smoking and drinking in public in Uganda, she's not surprised. She came from a culture where this is normal. But if it's a Ugandan sees Latoya smoking and drinking, there's a problem. Cultural values. So we need to understand the beliefs and cultural values when we are addressing the conflict mapping. We also need to pay attention to the power dynamics and relationships. These are very critical things that we need to pay attention to. Thank you, Hassan, for letting me know that you are learning a lot. I appreciate that. It's important to us. You understand? Because I am telling you, if you are not careful, your focus is going to be on the things you see on the screen, and that's where your funding comes from. And so most organizations, and those of you who run companies and organizations, the reason you are not getting money to fund the organization is because your funding is driven by what you see on the screen. So when you are even writing proposals for funding, you are looking at you in your proposal when they say you should do how do you call it? Aaron, I've forgotten the terminology they use in writing proposal. Not a case study, problem statement. When they ask you to design
problem statements,
Stanley, when they ask you to design a problem statement, all you are designing is, and women are, and girls are not going to school and they are walking on the street and it leads to teenage pregnancy and that's all you write. And you don't get funding. Because in mapping of the problem, you are only addressing the 10% visible. Change your organizational strategy. Go back and review these notes and pay attention to the hidden 90%. I guarantee you, international organizations will give you money. But please don't go to USAID now. They don't have money. So international organizations will give you a lot of money to do your work because your focus has shifted from the 10% visible to the 90% hidden. So class, if you didn't learn anything at all, if you are able to focus on this piece of information that I have shared with you today, I guarantee you, you are going to get a lot of funding to do your program. Because if we are talking about the 10 visible project, if Care International is asking for funding and you're asking for funding, why do you think they are going to give money to them? They are not going to give it to you. If UNDP is looking for money, they are going to give it to them because you are a smaller organization. But when you focus on the 90 hidden, trust me, you are able to tell the people in the community that, or the funders and the donors, that listen, if you, what is happening in, again, I'm using this hypothetically, it doesn't mean a conflict is happening there, but what is happening in Jos State, and for us here in Osun State, if we don't address this 90 hidden situation, the feasible 10% in Jos State will happen to us. That is how you design your proposals. Good. Let's move on. My goal is that we will end in the next 15 minutes so that because I don't want us to, if you stay that long, you lose all that we have learned. So now, so there are 4 components of conflict mapping. 4 components of conflict mapping, and I want you to pay attention to them. The 4 essentials in conflict mapping. The first one that you need to pay attention to are the parties. Who are the individuals, groups, and organizations involved? So we are addressing the conflict problem. The problem that is happening. Who are the people involved? Is it about politicians? Is it about community leaders? Is it about societies? Who are the people involved that is actually escalating or making the conflict becomes unbearable and affecting the life of the people in the community? It is very important to understand. And the reason the parties is important to identify in your mind, in your mapping, is because you can directly engage those involved. Why will I go and have a conversation with Barikisu when Barikisu is not a decision maker? I'm wasting time. I'm wasting time. You identify the key players. And then after you've identified, so most of the conflicts you see in Africa, particularly, it's between a warlord, a community leader, a community engagement people, people who think that resources is being stolen from them and given to other people. So where are the community leaders? They are the people you engage in this conversation. And when you have done that, then you need to look at the issues. What is the issue at hand? What is the actual problem at hand that we are dealing with? As I said, I flew from I went to Brazil, and not Brazil, I'm sorry, Israel, and I was coming to the United States, and in the plane I had the Iranian on my left, and I was in the middle seat. Unfortunately, I didn't have too much money, so I didn't fly business. So I was in the middle, and, and
calm down. I don't let you relax.
I was in the middle seat, and I have Iranian on my left and Israeli on my right. And as we are in midair, and these are how people work for the United Nations. So in our conversation, I asked them, I said, so tell me, why are you people fighting? And then the Iranian said, we are not fighting. They are fighting. And that caught my attention. You understand? So the reason why I brought this up is that we need to, because they don't even know the issues why they are fighting. What is happening that has created a lot of dispute is historical. Many years of Golan Heights and Jerusalem and all that and historical things that even the people who themselves were at the time were supposed to have make a move have died and gone long ago. But we are still fighting over this because we don't even know the basic fundamental issues that we are fighting about. So when you are doing conflict mapping, you need to go to the root cause to appreciate what the actual problem and dispute at stake are. Because if you don't know what is at stake, trust me, many young people, many people running NGOs today, if you ask them the problem that they are solving, how did the problem start? They don't know. So it's very important. Then relationships. You want to look at what is the connection dynamics? Who are the people that we can easily tap into their skill set and knowledge to help us identify and solve the problem? And why? See, there's a course that we teach at the Juggles, which is called Understanding Your Why. Very powerful class. I will encourage everyone, whenever we open that class, sign up. Understanding your why. If you don't know why a thing exists, you are going to abuse it. It's just as simple as that. So understand the underlying needs. Why are these people fighting? Why are they interested in this project? What is it that is motivating them to take guns and kill themselves? What is it that is leading them to misbehave? What is the motivation? What is it that is inspiring them? Until you are able to understand those processes, you would not be able to achieve the needed results that you are looking for. Now, identify and categorizing parties. Yes, I see. Yes, these materials will be given to you after the entire class is over. Tomorrow class is over. It will be part of the certificate that will come to you from the organization. So yes, you'll get the material. You'll also get the video recording once it is edited. Identify and categorizing parties. It's very, very important. You know, the reason this is important is, again, you need to understand that whenever you are addressing the problem, always identify the primary parties, those that are directly involved. You see, otherwise, the problem you are going to have is that you are going to be beating around the bush. You'll be going through problems, you'll be going through the hater skater, but the real person that need to be addressed with, you're avoiding the person. You know, I see this happening in organizations, in churches, in mosques, in schools. The real problem, the real parties involved, you rather don't get them involved. That's why I mentioned earlier on, for those of you who maybe you have a customer service issue, you have your MTN is not working, or your Tigo is not working, or your DSTV is not working, and you call and you talk to somebody at the reception. They don't have authority to make decisions. So instead of wasting time to explain the whole problem because you are annoyed and you are angry and you go, yeah, my DSTV is not working. Why is it that when I call my MTN, it's not working? You are wasting time and energy. Instead, say, can I please speak to the supervisory authority for the day or the manager on duty? Because the manager on duty has authority and power to make decisions. The receptionist doesn't have authority to make decisions. So your venting, your annoyance, your shouting doesn't go beyond that person. In fact, what you don't even know, most people who are working customer service will tell you, the moment they hear you screaming and shouting, because it's not on video, they just put a pause and put you on hold for you to talk. You can talk and talk and talk to yourself. When you finish, say, yes, ma'am, so how may I help you? So it's very important, because at the end of the day, the actions will definitely impact the outcome. Those parties, when you are dealing with leaders, there's a conflict in your community. You know that the people in the community listens to the community leader. Why are we having a conversation and we avoid a community leader? Or it's a political fight. Why are we having a conversation and avoid the political, the opposition leader? Because he has a base, whether you like it or not. That person has a base that follows him or her. And so you need to get that person involved in that discussion, because that person alone can just go to the community and tell the people, my people, I think we have made a deal. So let's give peace a chance and there will be peace. But when you become stubborn-headed and you don't get the people that matters and you think you can bypass them and talk to people who are lower than them, we are wasting time and energy. And then the secondary parties, other than the immediate parties, there's a secondary parties. And the secondary parties are the people that our actions and inactions affects indirectly. There's a whole group of people that our actions will affect indirectly. I'll tell you a good example. In 1948, 1945, when the US dropped a bomb in Japan, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, until today, people born in those regions still comes up with deficiencies. Either one arm is not there, or one eye is not there, or they have become sexually dysfunctional. So many things happened because of that bomb that was dropped some 50 something years ago. The secondary impact is that the children born today in that land are still suffering. To pay attention to these things. You understand? And then you also look at the third parties, who are the observers, who are the mediators, who are the facilitators of this conflict. We go back to Sierra Leone and we look at the war in Sierra Leone, and you will appreciate and understand that Sierra Leone, once upon a time, was known as one of the most richest countries on earth because they are one of the world leading producers of diamond. And so who are the people behind the scene that are fueling conflict? That is the reason why those of you who follows African history, that's the reason why you realize that Charles Taylor was indicted and sent to The Hague for causing conflict in Sierra Leone because of the diamonds. Those are key players for the Sanko. All those are key players who play in that conflict. So when you are doing conflict mapping, you don't only look at the primary and the secondary, but you also look at the third parties involved. But there's another group of people that are interesting. They are called the invisible people. And I want to tell you, let's forget about global conflict, African conflict, and come to your personal conflict, what we call intrapersonal conflict, your own conflict. Or conflict, let's do interpersonal conflict as well between you and your household and your family. There's a reason why I'm telling you this. Whenever somebody suddenly change around you, pay attention to me carefully. It's a learning we are learning. Whenever somebody suddenly change around you, begin to start looking for the invisible parties. I am telling you, don't joke with it. If you joke with it, you will look for me one day to give me my stone. Because they are absent, you don't see them, but they are very influential. Very, very, very influential. And they can be a family member, they can be an uncle, they can be an aunt, they can be your best friend. You know, Bob Marley. When you guys joined the class, you saw me playing Bob Marley. I'll play Bob Marley all the time because the words of wisdom that he spoke was amazing. Now, Bob Marley said that only your friend knows your secret. And so when they hurt you, it hurts so bad. You shared everything with them. And so when they become invisible party to you, you are in a dangerous ground. That is what hurts so much. Those of you, again, who knows about African history very well, you will realize the situation in Burkina Faso, how Blaise Compaoré became a president with his relationship with Thomas Sankara. So it's very important to understand the invisible parties. And sometimes their actions can be generational. So we need to pay attention and have that perspective and understanding of those perspectives. Now let's do some quick analysis or analyzing how do we analyze a conflict issues and also positions versus interest. Yes, Latoya, I love that music too much because they can reveal what you have shared in confidence. And Jessica, yes, very dangerous parties in conflict. They are the invisible people. Nobody, especially in our African settings, those are the people who have money. They control. You don't see them. But when even a president is about to make a decision, the president needs to consult them. And when we watch, thank to our Nigerian friends, we see all these Nigerian movies. We see when somebody is about to make a decision and the chief is not contacted or the chief does not approve it. You see, the chief will show you where power lies. He will organize people behind your scene and he will be smiling with you, yet he's the one killing you. So it's very important we pay attention to the... Now, in terms of analyzing the issues, you always want to pay attention to the substantive issues first. The substantive issues could include things like money, time, space, materials. Those are very substantive because that is how we are able to get things done. And so you need to analyze that how much is involved in this process. What is it going to cost us to start a thing? And how do we organize ourselves to achieve that? You also want to make sure you pay attention to procedures. You know, what kind of decision are we going to make here as we analyze the issues? When you sit with your team to do those mind mapping, what kind of psychological impact are we bringing to this conversation? How is this going to affect our work and all that? And then you also look at the position and interest frameworks. Positions are very important. what people say they want. Because when you are negotiating, when you are designing a mapping, people will tell you what they are looking for. I've seen situations where people will tell you that, hey, okay, this side of the land, we want it. And others says, no, we can't give you that side of the land because that is where the minerals are. Why should we give you that side of the land? Conflict. So we need to pay attention to make sure that we know what people want, and then we can utilize that in our discussion and see how can we compromise. How can we make sure we bring those conflict methodologies that we talked about into play to address that particular problem or peculiar problem? Why? What is the interest? Why do they want it? Why is it? And we can use Nigeria as an example. In the past, all of you will appreciate and understand the between the, is it the Bakasu conflict? Professor Margaret, you can correct me if I'm mentioning it properly, but there's a conflict in the Cameroonian part of Nigeria.
The Bakassi Peninsula.
The Bakassi
Peninsula.
Absolutely. So the question you ask yourself is that why is it that it has been a conflict all over these years? What is it at all in that peninsula that nobody wants to give out? When you are doing conflict mapping, you need to understand why people want that. If you don't have an underlying understanding of the motivation why people take an entrenched position, you will not be able to address the conflict properly. It is very important to understand that. Edu, say your hand is up. Do you have a question?
Yeah, good evening, Doc. Thanks for the analysis so far. I just want to share some view and perspective on what you are just saying. Sure. Today, I had the opportunity to resolve a conflict, and the main issue is about a property, and it's a family property. And we all know that family properties are for the living, the dead, and then generation unborn. Mm-hmm. So a group of the family members wanted the property to be shared. In fact, when we met at the office, we didn't know and understand the nature of the property. But today, when I met them, where the property is located, actually it's a number of shops they have developed, and they are still developing it. So when we got there, I realized that if the property should be shared in its current form, it's going to create a problem. For instance, if a group decides to sell their part of the property, it's going to affect all the other group. So we advise them that no. And they've also leased the property for 10 years. Everybody in the shop is having 10 years or 12 years. So even if it is shared today, your interest or benefit in it cannot be realized unless after the 10, 12 years. And most of the people are old women and old men. So we advise them now, no, they need to take some decision. Otherwise, if it should be shared, the problem will be more than if it is live the way it is now.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing the practical experience of that. And I'm sure this class has also enhanced that understanding why this is happening. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much for sharing that. Great. So after which we want to also look at the mapping relationships and the dynamics. What are the relationship dimension to access? One, the power dynamics. It is always critical, both from the corporate, family, academic, just name it. Formal authority and decision-making power is one of the best ways by which you appreciate when you are doing mapping, because it helps you to know their association to the conflict. Informal influence and persuasions ability. Because in understanding the involvement of these people, you also have the opportunity to know whether or not their level of influence matters. And then you can also look at the communication patterns. Other than the power dynamics, there is also a communication patterns. You know, we initially talked about whether you are blunt or not, whether you like a direct or indirect, and the frequency and the quality of the communication that is happening within that same space. And then what are some of the things that will lead to communication breakdown? But we know that communication breaks down all the time when we are negotiating and when we are discussing, because people will take an entrenched positions. But I tell folks all the time, when you are designing a conflict mapping strategy, always pay attention to the historical relationship quality. Let's go international one more time. How on earth do we expect Iran to trust Israel? How on earth do we expect the Palestinians to trust Israel? How on earth do we expect Israel to trust these folks? Historical context, historical relationships. You will know for a fact that when America goes to war, Britain will stand with America. Historical fact. So it is very important to understand, and then also pay attention to past betrayals. You see, I tell people all the time, well, you see, the president of America will call for a ceasefire between Israel and Iran, and they both don't trust themselves. Because why? Of past betrayals. President Putin will say, well, okay, I'm going to hold a ceasefire and I'm not going to bomb Ukraine. And the Ukrainian president will say, we don't trust them because they've broken that promise a million times. So past betrayal is also important. You also want to pay attention to the current emotional temperature. When you are discussing a negotiation tactics between parties and the temperature is so charged, nobody is willing to compromise, and people are, you know, ready to kill and die for what they think they are preserving historical values, then you know you have a problem at hand that you need to pay attention to in addressing them. All right. So what are some of the step-by-step approach that we can utilize in developing a conflict mapping? Information gathering. If you want to engage in identifying what the root cause and the problem is, you need to first of all gather information. The problem with most NGOs and organizations and youth organizations, I'm sure all of you here have heard many times, they call it what? There's a terminology. Kojo, do you remember? They call it youthful exuberance. I think that is the terminology, right? Kojo, that's how they call it, right? Kojo? They call it youthful exuberance.
That is how they call it, yes.
So because of youthful exuberance, we don't take enough time to gather enough information. We don't interview the parties to understand what is actually happening. We don't pay attention to have relevant documentation to be able to gather the data that we are looking for. We don't even observe and interact with the people that matters. So the first approach or the first phase of the process is information gathering. The second phase is the analyzing and organization. How do we categorize the parties into one group? How do we address the issues into another group? And how do we handle the interest of the various groups? How do we distinguish facts from fiction? And that is one of the problems that most people have. And the gaps are always the reason why there are problems. So the first approach is information gathering. And the second approach is analysis and organization. The third approach is the visual representation. You see, those of you who are scholarly, the use of whiteboard, the use of sticky notes, the use of flow charts, maps, those are all visual representation because people get to see what you are actually putting on paper for them to feel that we are making headway. And then the validation and refinement. See, I tell people this. In conflict mapping, the first version is never the final version. No, it can't be. Because we have to, it's a process. And if it's a process, we have to, validate, we have to draft, we have to redraft. Those of you who have had opportunities of being at the United Nations, especially if you get opportunity to be in the Security Council or be in the main chamber at the UN and a resolution is being passed. We have to negotiate, we have to engage, we have to convert, we have to twist arms to a resolution. Look, last year, during the CSW 69, there was a decision to adopt the final agreement. Nigeria said no. Nigeria kept every country on a hold until they started talking to the Nigerian ambassador, began to talk to the Nigerian permanent mission to the UN, convincing them, agreeing to disagree. They have to call the Nigerian Home Office in Abuja to have a conversation with the Minister of Foreign Affairs until they came back to say, finally, we've agreed. And then it was adapted. So it is very important to understand that these things will not always be the final, but it will be a process to get there. What are some of the common pitfalls, some common mistakes that we do? I believe that it is absolutely important to appreciate that. And we are wrapping up, guys. We are almost there. Oversimplification. If you are not careful, the problem you are going to have is that you will reduce complex dynamics to a very simple diagram. So you will think that, oh, because you just have a diagram and we've put all some charts and we put some things here and there, like you see on the screen, we've solved the problem. Absolutely no. Include multiple layers and knowledge complexities. It's very important. Number two, the second pitfall that you could easily find is the idea of biasness and assumption. You can mistakenly impose your interpretation on others' experience, especially those who are authority on a subject. You can think that, oh, because I am this, I am this, I am that, I am this, I am that, I know the subject. No, you make a hefty mistake. That is why it's important to validate your findings with all the people involved so that everybody will be on the same page. And then static thinking. You start treating conflict as fixed rather than dynamics. Conflict is evolving. And so if it's evolving, we need to update the map regularly to ensure that it involves all the parties in that process. And then information overload, like I'm doing right now. I've given you too much information. Technically this class is like the whole day from morning to the evening. But I don't know if all of us don't have that time, that luxury of time, except the day Kojo brought all of us together in Spain. Then we can do morning to evening. But otherwise, we don't have that luxury of time. But information overload. Once we have too much information, it also creates conflict by itself. And then confidentiality breaching, when you have discussed, you have made a plan, you have strategized, and then somebody sneak out to reveal sensitive information to people who are not supposed to have that kind of information. We are going to have a real problem at hand. So your solution is to have an established guidelines so that information is shared properly among everyone. So how do we use this conflict mapping as a strategic tools for intervention and planning? Priority settings. Which issues should I address first? Because there may be many issues, but let's set a priority. Which relationship need to be strengthened first? And which parties do we need to engage initially? So we don't rush to do things that are of no priorities. Like risk management, those of you who have taken courses in project management, you know, in terms of risk management, you prioritize according to the risk. So if the risk is not severe, it can be accepted because we know it is not, when the risk happens, nothing is going to happen. But when it's a very high risk, then we pay attention to that. The same way, you have to have an intervention design. You know, who are the people going to be involved in that design process? And then we also want to have a communication strategy. We've established in this class that the most dangerous part of everything you can have is when communication breaks down. So how do we reframe our communication? How do we send a message to be credible to the people that we are communicating with? And how do we which channel do we use? Are we going to use, recently, those of you in America, you know that the Department of Defense went to use Signal, and it brought a whole confusion. Even the government advisor on security affairs was sacked. So it's very important on that. Now, how do we measure our sources if indeed we are using this information? We need to measure the process by putting in place the things that we intend to achieve and see whether it is being achieved. And if it is being achieved, then we are working in perfect pace to achieve that process. Well, this is the end of today's class. I must say that this is just 40 slides of 80 slides for today's class. Unfortunately, we have a lot of technical issues in the beginning, so we just end here. I believe we have shared too much information that if we decided to continue again, we will lose all of you. And so I want to thank all of you for allowing me. At this point, I want to give 5 minutes for any question, any contribution, anything whatsoever that you want to chime in. And guys, as for teaching, it is my passion. Before coming here, I've taught a class, 3-hour class before teaching this class. Those of you in my class, you know, I've taught a whole class before I came here. So I look forward for us to have a good time tomorrow. Tomorrow, the focus area is going to be centered on human rights education. Another powerful class that you will enjoy beautifully. But before I call Kojo to give us a wrap up, I see a couple of hands. We'll take only 3 because time is fast spent. Let's begin with you, Elvis. Elvis Mensah, I see your hand is up. If you have a question, a contribution, whatever you want to say, please go ahead. Going 1, going 2. Okay, Elvis makes his point. NASA, you
Hello.
Yes, Elvis.
Yeah, this is Elvis.
Yes.
I want to thank you very much for the depth insight that you have given so far. I wanted to ask a lot of questions, but the network is not giving us the opportunity. So tomorrow, I pray that you will provide a space at which we can ask questions offline on the WhatsApp so that you can respond to that, and then you give it, you revert to us.
I appreciate it. Yes, we will definitely put on the chat. If you have any question, you can put it there and we will respond to that as well from there. Thank you. Nasser.
Hello, sir. My name is Nasir. Thank you very much for this fruitful presentation with full information. So I can say on behalf of Nigerian students, perhaps, or especially we from Northern Nigeria, from Kano, we are very grateful, and this is very helpful for us where there is many problems and we have the fruitful impact. I appreciate.
All righty. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you. And Abdul, I see your hand up. You will be our last person for today.
Thank you very much, Prof. I just want to thank you for this insightful teaching. It's not easy to teach for several hours like this. The time I was dozing off and I have to motivate myself again and again. And again, I asked a question within the chapter but I couldn't get an answer as to when conflict escalates to violent extremism or what makes conflict to escalate to violent extremism. Thank you.
So, Abdul, I'll ask if it's possible. Please put that question in the WhatsApp chat because your line was breaking, so I couldn't hear exactly what you were asking. But put the question in the WhatsApp chat, and I will respond there as well.
All right, sir.
All right. I see Prince. I'll give you the last slot, Prince.
Yes, sir. Please, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, sir. God bless you and thank you so much for this very wonderful education. In fact, I've gained a lot. But per your teachings, then what it means is Africa, we are not solving any conflict. So far, so good. Why am I saying this? Up till now, there are little children who are schooling under trees. And we will wait for something to happen before societies or stakeholders will come together to solve that particular problem. Whereas they could have come together earlier on to find ways and means to build proper edifice for these children to use for their education. So in effect, I've come to realize that Africa, to be precise, we are not solving any conflict whatsoever. Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you so much. And the reason why we are not solving conflict whatsoever, as you indicated, is very simple. It's because we are only interested in the 10% visible, and the 90% invisible under the iceberg is not being discussed. And I will tell you this as well, not only in Africa, it's across the world. If you don't hold people accountable, you get nothing from them, because at the end of the day, once the elections are over, everybody goes back to survival mode. And so the people you elected to serve you immediately becomes gods over you. I told a group of people that I was working with yesterday, I mentioned to them, I said, what I have observed in our part of the world is that even when you are paying money for service, they still consider you as they doing you a favor. So you are paying for a service, but you can't ask questions because they are doing you a favor. Accountability is the reason why we have all these problems and we are unable to resolve them. And so for that point, I think time is fast spent. Please, if you have any other question, please put it in the chat and we'll answer that. Kojo, I want to invite you to give us a wrap up, and then I'll see all of you tomorrow exactly at 12:30 Eastern, US Eastern, which will be the same time, whatever time you join today. Again, I apologize for the technical stuff that happened from the beginning when Microsoft decided that at the middle of the class, they decided that I have no choice because my computer need to be updated. And so I apologize for that. But otherwise, Kojo, over to you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Thanks to you all here. I can see that after almost, I can say 3 hours of class, nobody's tired. So that means we are enjoying, or we have enjoyed the class. So thank you very much, Prof. So to come back to the course, I can see conflict mapping, something that is very important. And I know that from today on, each situation, any situation that we face that can be related to a conflict, we know that mapping is very important. We know that we only focus on the visible part of problems, of issues, and we fail to address the root causes of conflict. And that is what is making it impossible for us to really transform conflict to build peace in our communities. And I really enjoyed what everybody said about what conflict means for him or for her. So from that perspective, we can see that uh, depending on where we live, depending on our situation, conflict can mean something or something else. You know, I'm from a country, Togo, where our government has something like a slogan. They always cry, they always shout peace, 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 peace. But in the recent years, Togolese youth are saying something. Peace is also bread. Peace is also having access to education. Peace is also having access to healthcare system. So you see, depending on the situation you are in, things mean different thing for you. So thank you very much. We really enjoyed the class. And as I said, this is something that will be continued. This group, our WhatsApp group, will be active. We'll be sharing our insight, any question we have, any information we have. But please let us try to be in the frame: conflict, transformation, peace building. Please let us try to be there. Thank you very much. So I will see you tomorrow, same time and with the same energy. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kojo. Thank you, everyone of you. Thank you, and we'll see you tomorrow. Bye bye.